Good evening, everyone, and so sorry for being late. Something went up on my laptop. I couldn't get any sound or pictures, but we're here. Better late than never to cover this absolutely fascinating subject, death. I've had a couple of messages actually today, Jen. How are you? Anyway, sorry, I got very
Yeah, good.
there.
No problem. It happens. It's okay.
Yeah, a couple of messages that people that were a bit concerned about joining because they felt that they might, I don't know, it might be distressing for them. And I was like, no, it's not going to be like that at all. The very opposite. I think you and I both are, I'm not sure what the adjective would be, but fairly fascinated by the subject. But I think from the work that I do, and I'm sure this affects you too, how the fear affects people's health. So do you want to kick off with a little bit from you, and then I'll come in?
Yeah. So I think it was about a month ago you sent me a text saying you want to talk about death. I was like, hell yeah. Except a stronger word, but I don't want to offend anybody or their kids.
Right.
Yeah. I do a lot of work around the terms I would use are initiation, death, and rebirth, these cycles of transformation, cycles of life, cycles of existence. And I see it as a part of that. It is, I see it as kind of a door, a progression, a way to move through, or move within, or move. It's kind of for me it's a way to move into another vibration, incarnation, whatever terminology you use for that. And I am certainly not an expert on the subject. Oh, Lily, I hope you're still here. I think you've frozen up a little bit. Hopefully we're still on. But yeah, basically I'm definitely not an expert, but it's something that I'm open to and interested in and always exploring. And I think it's a great, I think it's important for us to talk about. Oh, are you back?
Yes, dear me, sorry, I was just...
Okay. So I was just saying that I'm not sure how much of this went through or not, but
Yeah, no, I heard it all. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But I think it's important for us to have these conversations, because if we are scared of things and we don't talk about it, we just become more fearful, because our subconscious is afraid of the unknown. It's afraid of what we can't logically explain. So I think having these conversations, even though obviously, you can debate on how much we can actually know, or just intuit, or, have a deeper understanding of on some other level. So, so I just am happy to have a conversation and see what comes of it.
Well, I think as you know, and as a few people that follow me know, that I've been learning a bit about the Bible, shall we say. And I think from my perspective, years ago when Joanna was diagnosed with leukemia, that's the first time I really seriously thought, what is death? And my friend bought me the Celestine Prophecy, and I sort of went down a path of reincarnation narrative, which sort of made sense to me. So, and I've also realised it's a really good idea to do some research and find something that really makes you feel peaceful and calm, and think, okay, that I can make sense of that, and that takes a lot of the angst and the fear out of things for me. So I became very comfortable with that belief system, because that's all that we all have, I think. And that you chose your parents and that whole thing, that was up until very recently. And I'm not saying I don't believe that now, but actually learning about what the Bible says, I'm like, oh, of course, there's another story. And then you're like, there's actually a lot of different narratives, and arguably that can be what causes a lot of the problems for us as well. It's as it was like a competition. Our story's true, no, our story's true, our God, our whatever, that ends up
We like to be
causing.
right. It feels good to feel right.
Well, exactly. You absolutely want to be right, and you get very triggered by people who don't believe the same things as you, and that still goes on today, even in the spiritual world. So what I've been, I think, and you know, because I work with a lot of people that have been diagnosed terminal, it becomes the big elephant in the room.
Yeah.
When in actual fact, you know, nobody really knows when it's going to be time, and I think telling people is crazy, you know, given your perspective or your opinion. Because even a lot of the doctors, because obviously we lost our parents, our aunts and uncles over the last few years, a lot of them just don't like to say, because they said, you know, we very often get it wrong, but we can kind of pin our whole thing on, oh, we're going to die, when we're all actually going to die. And I know certainly with, again, I'll go back to Joanna, because that was my most kind of powerful, painful experience. But in the time that it took from her diagnosis to when she crossed, you know, two of my other friends lost their kids in accidents, in motorbike accidents. So, you know, it's that whole idea of like, suddenly it just brings it into your mind that it's going to happen. Or, you know, maybe if you've got suicidal thoughts, or if you're really down, you want it to happen. So it's such a huge, huge thing. And it's also just like, don't talk about it. People do not want to really hear that word. And I've found, I don't know about you, because obviously I've been in the salon a lot recently, and we end up talking about it a lot because it's happening all around us, you know, just now. And also if people are very ill, you know, what I find talking to people is that it's not the actual death part that's the scary part. It's how is it going to happen? What's going to happen between now and then? And is there going to be a lot of suffering and pain? And, you know, for me, if we can make some kind of peace with the idea of this thing that we call death, what even actually is it? And then it's going to make life now a hell of a lot nicer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's C.S. Lewis has been credited with writing about this or saying this, and it's keeps being requoted by mystics. And I keep reminding myself of it too. And it's this notion of it's the die before you die. And it's this notion that, if you can really allow, and so people, you can call that ego death or death of subconscious belief systems or emotions or karmic patterns, or, you know, there's all these different levels and layers that this could happen on. But I think the idea behind it, at least for me, is that if we can purposefully and mindfully and willingly begin to strip away the things that are not true, the things that we cling to, the things that we feel make us who we are, that death before we die means that the process is more graceful and it's easier because we're not clinging to things that aren't even real anyway, that aren't permanent, that aren't actually a part of who we are on these deeper levels. And it's really interesting because I've seen these practices. I think it's in the Scandinavian countries where older people just start to clear out their homes and donate or give away. And they just go ahead and start these, like, kind of not a death practice per se, but like a preparation for that. Like, people are going ahead and saying, well, I know these things are not me. I also don't want to burden my family with them once I'm gone, because this isn't anything that's really me. So I've been really fascinated with kind of death practices in preparation for that. And what does it take to die before you die? What does it take to surrender, to really allow yourself to examine, well, what is real and true about me? Well, nothing really physical, not really in the belief systems, not a lot in the mind, you know. So it's kind of allowing yourself to access these deeper parts of you and saying, okay, well, what is really true? And if I can begin to release my attachment to the things that are not, then that process just becomes easier and easier and easier. And it makes it easier to make different transitions and changes in your life while you're alive. But it also, I don't know, enables you to approach these bigger themes of, you know, finalities and endings with I think some more courage and some more grace, really. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it seems to me, I mean, I was pretty amazed I didn't even know what it said in the Bible about death. I mean, that's
Mhm.
ridiculous at my age. It's a little bit embarrassing. So when this Bible that I'm kind of, I can't remember the name of it because I know there's different ones. Basically, it says you go to sleep and there is no heaven and there is no hell, and you just go to sleep, and at some point the resurrection will happen, right?
Okay.
So I was sort of like, aye, but I've got a lot of buts. There's a lot of buts for me around that one. But let's say we're not really arguing over what narrative people believe. If you have
Mhm.
faith, ultimately it means that someday you're going to see your loved ones again. That however that's going to happen, whether it's there is some mass resurrection, whether it is that as we go into this in between space and we with our soul group, I think really what we're all looking for is some kind of confirmation that it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think regardless of whether I'm would decide to take on because I'm a bit like that, I'll just shop for the belief system I like the best. And then I'll just take that.
Why not?
Because really, from my perspective, like you're just talking about all the letting go of all the concepts, the
Mhm.
labels and stories and the limiting beliefs and the past traumas and hurts and all that stuff. The more detached we can be,
Mhm.
the more power our immune system has. And
Yeah.
the more we can just go, well, it's a part of life as birth is,
Mhm.
and we're probably going to see each other again at some point. So there's really not really a lot to sweat about here. Although I mean, I know it can be painful, and I'm
Yes.
trivializing it all here. But
Yeah.
I've experienced the deep pain of loss, so I'm not making it. It's not a
Yeah.
serious thing. But if we can shift our belief systems and make them lighter around this,
Mhm.
inevitable, or what certainly for
Mm.
now would appear to be inevitable ending for some of our loved ones and for ourselves,
Yeah.
surely then the living here and the now is just going to be so much lighter and brighter
Yeah.
with that inner knowing. And
Mhm.
I was arguing with my Bible teachers because I said, well, if Jesus came here, he could remember why he was here. He knew. He wasn't being asked to blindly believe in something.
Mhm.
He knew he could communicate with his father, and he knew what he was here to do. Whereas we're all at a disadvantage because none of us really know. We have this, well, is it amnesia? Whatever. Um, so faith, how do you get faith? That kind of inner knowing where you're absolutely always, you're an infinite soul, infinite being.
Mhm.
How do you get that when you don't have it?
Well, I would argue that even Jesus lost his momentarily, remember at the end?
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is I think, I know we can talk a lot about like awakened masters and things like that. I think we all have that capacity within us. That's my belief system. Nobody else has to
Uh-huh.
believe that. But I think part of the awakening process is a remembering process. And I think that the more we kind of strip away the identities and labels and remember who we really are, then faith is much easier because we remember that we're capable, that we came here for a few reasons, whatever those are individually for each of us, that we're here with the gifts and skills to be able to do that. There's a direction, there's a path, there's a purpose. And again, there's 100 different ways each of us could do that. But I think that for me, understanding faith has been a process. And it's been about me recognizing how to follow my intuition. And that as I follow my intuition, I'm in the right direction. I'm on the right path. I feel much more guided and centered and present in myself. There's
Mhm.
less suffering. There's less pain. There's less of me feeling like I'm screwing things up. So for me, it's been the trust and the faith with that has been something that it has built over time.
Mhm.
Um, I think, and I mean, we could probably break down what truth faith really means and blind faith and things like that. But at least my experience has been, is it's something that I needed to build and understand through that
Mhm.
practice of it. Maybe is a
Yeah.
good way to. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think because I'm exactly the same as you, it's
Mhm.
not something um, that happened overnight. And
Yeah.
I remember reading that people with faith live longer. They're
Mhm.
happier relationships, and
Mhm.
I didn't really understand that back in the day when I first kind of came across that kind of data.
Mhm.
But then you could realize if when you have that inner knowing of which I have of a lot of things,
Mhm.
um, you're at peace. You're completely at
Yeah.
peace because you're not in any rush to try
Mhm.
and see if it's true or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a big part of it, isn't it? It's the patience thing. It's just like just
Yeah.
trust. I mean, I
Yeah.
use these two words, trust and surrender, a lot when I'm
Mhm.
helping people to let go,
Mhm.
um, because we know that the contraction and the wanting to control and the resistance creates this contraction and makes things harder. And it means if there is any fear or any pain, it just becomes stronger as we move into the contraction of it. And
Mhm.
and what I find with a lot of my clients who have, it's usually cancer, that I've been told, they're coming near the end. That's the fear is can be really overwhelming,
Yeah.
and it can spoil any nice time that you have left.
Mhm.
And the other thing I was thinking is, in a lot of Indigenous tribes, they'll chant you across, they'll sit around
Mhm.
your bed
Yeah.
and chant and help the soul move on, if that's
Yeah.
your jam.
Mhm.
And I just think we in the West, again, we don't have time. We don't have time to let people die in their own time, and it's really we've tried to speed up the birth process, speed
Mhm.
up the contractions, get the baby out as quickly as possible, and we're doing exactly the same
Mhm.
thing in the death process, where it can take a long time, and
I
you've got
don't
to go
know if
back to work.
Mhm.
You get how long do you get? A week to grieve? It's madness the way we do things, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you ever watched the show 6 Feet Under. It came out like 20 years ago. It's my favorite show of all time. And it's about a
Really?
family
No.
that owns a funeral home, and there's a real difference in the brothers and how they approach things, because one's very clinical. It's you follow the rules, this is how it's all done. It's very sterile in a lot of ways. And the other
Uh-huh.
brother's like, people should be wailing and screaming. People should be expressing themselves. They should be sharing how they feel about in this. So it's really interesting to see how what people will allow themselves to express, what they will allow themselves to even be around. Because for
Uh-huh.
some people, it's a scary thing. They don't want to participate or be a part of it because it's just becomes something that's very frightening for them. So yeah, just very interesting to see how culturally things are different in different places as well.
Well, that's, I
Yeah.
think that's because I kind of came to the conclusion when I thought it'd be really handy if we all just believed the same thing.
Good luck.
Wouldn't it? Just out of sheer practicality, it would be really handy for us to
We'd all be
share
the
the.
same person, though.
Well, do you think so? Do you think it would, I mean, in terms of, like, um, well, what would you have to fight over? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Do you think
yeah,
that's a crazy, crazy thought? I just thought, well, how could you fight if everybody just believed the same thing, that
yeah.
there's a
Well,
creator, and you better be good. Because
I
according to
had
sorry,
one of the
keep.
most profound experiences of my life, and actually, this really relates to what we're talking about with death and pain. It was I can't remember. I think I was in high school. It was the Oklahoma City bombings in the states, and it was just all over the news for days and days, and it was horrific. And there's, just the pictures were awful. And I remember sitting watching the news, and like I grew up in church, but didn't really pray a lot. But I remember asking God, if there's a God, if there is something out there, how do things like this happen? And I would I don't know if it was my first time really going into a meditative state or receiving a download, or again, I don't know the language for it, but it just came through so clearly, this like deity energy, whatever God is, or source or creator, and all these pathways leading. And the message that I got is there are infinite pathways to God, and that we get the free will to choose the way that works for us to find it. Because we will all have different experiences, we'll all have different belief systems, but there's all a way for us to connect with that energy. And I don't know, it felt very profound, and it felt really, I think, a relief for me too, because I didn't really believe the way my grandparents did, or things like that, but I knew that there was
Mhm.
some but the way they were doing it
Yes.
was the way that worked for me. So it felt really empowering to know that, oh, there's a path for me, and I can just find my own way there, and I don't need to do it in the same way that I've been told I need to, or is the right way to do it. So I think that that's part of that kind of free will and free agency that we all have, to just figure out, okay, if there's a way for me to do it, let me find it, or just be with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, it has to be logical, because I know one of the big things is, it is carnage on this planet right now. There's
Yes.
so much going on. There's so many things going on. Where do you start? And you think, well, it'd be really easy to think, well, if there is a God, what the hell is he doing?
Mhm.
And I think you know, it's interesting if you're in a lot of pain, how people can just turn to God, but
Mhm.
then if you're awful in a lot of pain, you're just like, well, you turn away from him or
Mhm.
it, whatever. I
Mhm.
can't see it as a man myself,
Yeah, no.
um, and
Same.
and I think because I see it very much as frequency and vibration, and this is kind of what the new book's about, the kind of unconditional love frequency being what we call the divine. Now how that intelligence looks or works, I've got no idea, because
Sure.
keeping an eye on 8 billion nut jobs is quite a big job. So but if we have the grace and the humility, and to work with this intelligence. And I think a big thing is the assumption that there is something greater than us,
Mm,
higher than us, whatever word you want to use.
sure.
Something that we can talk to,
Mhm.
that is really always there for us to,
Mhm.
move into when we go into that place. That's the way I always see it. And I think that puts it firmly back with us. There's nobody saying, because I think guilt, isn't it? It's the guilt and the fear with a lot of religions that put people
Mhm.
off. They're just like, I don't want to live like this, with all this guilt and fear. Nobody does.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need these emotions to kind of make you go, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe there's a better way. It's such a kind of simple but so complex,
Yeah.
such a complex subject, which is like the commandments, for example. That word, a command, this is what you've got to do, follow
Mhm.
my rules. You're just like, that will do one, that's not happening. But in actual fact, when you read what what's been asked of humans, it's not really, I don't think it's too much to ask. Most of
Mhm.
it, some of it I would debate nowadays, and we're living in a different world, but don't murder people,
Yeah.
you know.
That's important. I think it's
It's
also remembering that, like, people wrote these books, like, they were divinely inspired, but it's still through the filter of a person or people, and so
human.
it's never gonna be, and they've all been retranslated 100 times, so it's,
Exactly. And the
it's keeping
language, the
on.
use of the English language, trying
Yeah.
to maintain the meaning, but using words that people today would understand,
Mhm.
because quite often I'm like that. I do not understand what that question is, because it's just like an oldie worldy English. So, but it's interesting. I think one of the most interesting things for me is actually, and one of my friends, Susan, she said, everything has to be considered. And I
Mm.
thought that's a good way to put it, isn't it?
Mm.
Instead of just going, oh, that's a lot of shite. It's like, let's just consider it. And that's kind of what I'm doing with because there's quite a few things that I've learned. I'm like, how did I get to this age and not know that? well, not know, I'm not saying that it's true, but not know that that was in the book.
Sure.
I really was really, really quite ignorant of it. But I think the death thing, let's go back to that, because, but it's all very relevant now, because it's really what you believe.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that can drive us and make things so much easier. If, I always say to people, if you're, if you put your order into Amazon, you don't sit at the letterbox looking out from the minute you ordered it, waiting for somebody to deliver. You just know that it'll arrive. And, so it's the same with the kind of communication with the energy, isn't it? It's just that knowing that, well, yeah, it'll either come or it won't come, and it's all good either way. It's trust. And trust really is the biggest thing. So how would you say, I think we could probably do an exercise each on helping people. I don't know who's watching, because I'm on my phone and I'm squinting now because I've been on my laptop for too long. If anybody's got any questions they want to ask, or if anybody has a fear around what happens. As I say, most people I speak to, it's not the death thing that scares them, it's what happens in between. But I think if you're dealing with the death of a child, or somebody that's been taken far too early and too soon, and has just literally ripped your heart out, then there's obviously a grief process but I think that then, if you can truly believe that you're going to meet again or see them again, it's got to make it a little bit easier. Maybe not straight away, but certainly further down the line, where you can come to that place of calm and peace, and knowing that it's all, it's all going to work out. Yeah. So you might know the answer to this better than me, but do most religious faiths, do you see your loved ones again?
Oh, I wouldn't know how to answer on behalf of all the religious faiths.
You don't know them all?
I think it's what we were talking about at the beginning, is that there's some kind of cycle or another incarnation, whether that's heaven or another lifetime or a reunion with souls or whatever that is. I think most religions that I'm aware of is that there is something after, that it's not just you're done and that's you have one life and that's it. I mean, I think, from my perspective, and this is what I believe, is that, and it kind of relates to that, is that if you can, it's really looking at why you believe we have life, which then leads to death. And I think if you believe that there is purpose for life and that we are here for reasons, maybe we don't always understand them as humans, maybe we have a hard time deciphering what they are, or hindsight always makes it easier. But for me, I have the belief that we come for a period of time, and as we know, it's whatever period of time it is, because there's a lifespan for us. But I believe that once we do the things we're here to do, we get a choice whether we go on or whether we want to stick around for longer. That's how I see things. So I think that, when we're hurt or suffering, you ask all those questions. Absolutely. In any situation. I mean, it could be the end of a relationship or a job, or, we question all these things. We want to know why it feels wrong or unfair. It feels like there's pain and suffering involved. So for me, my attempts are always to kind of zoom out a bit and say, well, what's the bigger picture that's going on here? And are there things that maybe I don't understand or haven't seen yet that would help me be more at peace with this? And it is, maybe there is a bit of faith and trust involved in that, and just knowing, well, maybe I can't know all the reasons or the answers, and I have to be able to make peace with that.
That's a very good point. Because I'm a bit obsessed with people, people that have had near-death experiences. I love watching all that, and because I've heard with William Buhlman, who does a lot of astral traveling. He says there's another reality very close and very like this one, and some of the near-death stories, that they're dead. And then it's a bit like in Ghost when they don't realise it. They're like, and why can't you hear me? And then they see their body lying over there and they're like, oh, wow, I'm dead. But they're not, because obviously their spirit or whatever it is that the consciousness stays in. I've found that, like, oh, well, okay, that kind of makes sense to me. And then the idea that, there's a purpose to coming here. I think you touched on that there. And I suppose, if you can truly believe there's a bloody good reason that we came, not just to suffer and be miserable.
No, that's not it.
Try and get through the days. It's like, and I know, I think if we can really truly believe there's a purpose, and then sort of keep focus on that. I know that may change and may look different as we go on. Then it's certainly, like you were saying, Anita Murjani's book, where she died and she was given the choice to go back and fulfill her life plan, or and she was looking at her body, stage 4 cancer, going, I don't really fancy going back in there.
Hard choice.
And then realised, oh, right, of course I can heal it. It's a phenomenal, I think, empowering story. And and I just think I never gave my kids a narrative because I had no idea. I just knew the narrative I was given at Sunday school didn't work for me. And I didn't really, when you're younger, I didn't have that much of an interest anyway, because obviously I thought I was going to live forever. And now you're just like that going, oh, right, it's going to might be your turn next. You never know. So, you're like, right, I wonder what it really is. And it's almost exciting for me, I have to say. I mean, I'm not quite ready to go yet, but, the idea of, like, what is there, and, what's going to happen next. And, I find that, for me, and I know not everybody sees it like that, a really fascinating part of life. And I think there must come a time where you're just quite glad to get out of the body.
Yeah. No, I think I agree. It's one of these things that's fascinating to kind of ponder and think about and wonder. And it's easy to say, oh, I think this is how it'll be for me. But until, you're at that point, or, or you're like Anita and kind of go and come back, it's very hard to be able to say for sure what it's going to be like. But yeah, again, I do think that the more we, there are death practices, there are meditations, there's things that you can do that are, in that vein of allowing endings, allowing that stripping back and that letting go. I think that gives us maybe a better idea of how we could approach that, or how we could look at it, or at least ways we can resolve some fears around the unknown, or fears of what we're unsure about within that.
Because there's the two things, isn't there? That's like, how's it going to be for us? But also there's the fear of losing people that we love. And in some ways it's probably easier when it's just yourself, rather than when it's, others. And also I think, having, my friend's a death doula, and I called her when my mum was dying. It was practical help that I think, is a good idea. But I'm much more interested in the traditional ways of, us being round. We were lucky we managed to keep my mum and dad at home, and I've sort of held people's hand, quite a few people's hands, even online. At that stage, it's a real privilege, to be with people then, and to really just love them across, thinking that you're really handing them over to the angels. That's the way I like to look at it, because that's the way my mind, it makes me feel, a lot better. And I really do like the idea of what you call it, praying or chanting or singing. I think it's a lovely, it's like a ritual, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think these rituals are so, so powerful. William Bullman reckons you're not going to get any Westerners to sit round your bed for 2 or 3 days chanting to you.
Wouldn't it be great if you could, though?
I know, but he said just get a really good recording and you can get them, get it played to help you across.
I mean, the idea, again, my understanding of ceremonies and ones I've been a part of and have facilitated, if you are meditating, praying, if you have music at the right frequency, if you have the right intentions, all of that, you can elevate the space. You can elevate everybody in it, anyone who's participating consciously or unconsciously.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we have these capacities to move ourselves towards these higher frequencies, and towards the peace and the trust and all those things that we're kind of reaching for anyway. So yeah, I think if we can't get people to sit around for 3 days and chant for us, there are ways to do it. We can find ways to do it. And maybe that's worth people thinking about, is what they want that to look like or feel like, if they do have the choices and are in those positions. And for people to talk to their families about that, to be able to communicate that and express that and share what those wishes are. Because so many people just don't know what their family members want. It's not discussed,
Absolutely.
never talked
Well,
about.
we definitely, I mean, I wrote an email to my kids after my mum died,
Mhm.
categorically stating what I do not want to
Yeah,
happen.
good.
And I don't want to be resuscitated. I want to just let me go, and
Yeah,
no life enhancing / misery prolonging drugs,
sure.
and no force feeding.
Yeah.
Just, allow that process. If I've
Mhm.
ordered a heart attack, but if I was to linger for a bit, because I think, even talking about that, the care
Mhm.
stage, you might need care, or if there was a level of
Yeah,
care, and because I think caring for somebody can be quite challenging, but I think
yeah.
when you're the one that's being cared for, understanding that you can make it easier.
Mhm.
You can make it easy for people to care for you. You can make it difficult. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously with Alzheimer's and dementia now,
Yeah,
that kind of is a different ball game.
yeah.
But yeah, I think these very candid conversations are very helpful, and especially around medication.
Mhm.
What you want to take and what, because I know with going back to my mum, we had never discussed it. So
Mhm.
I felt I was making choices for her that I really didn't want to make, because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so, some of these things just give me these pills give me the absolute, oh, they just make me
Mhm.
contract. So it's not nice having to make pretty big decisions like that for somebody else when you're not really sure what they would have wanted.
Yeah.
So it's a good conversation to have, much as it might not be one you want to have.
Yeah.
It's good to get all these things so that your family are clear,
Mhm.
and so that because having been in the position to sit with people at that stage, as I say, it's a privilege, a really sacred time, because what tends to
Mhm.
happen is there's only certain people they want around,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's so you're privileged if you're one of them, and you can really make a huge difference in
Mhm.
how if you feel at peace with it, and you're
Yes.
really kind of like, this is a like another transition, in the journey,
Yeah,
on. But
absolutely.
you were talking there about asking, talking to God, or whatever, the energy, or just being very clear in the communication. And what I thought, remember last year when Danielle was so ill and she was dying, and it was very painful for me, because obviously I'd just been close to her for that
Yeah.
whole time. And and then found myself praying and thought, you absolute cheapskate, only talking to this energy, really, because you're in so much pain. And I did think, that's really not right. You should create a
Mhm.
relationship with this energy, whatever it is, God, the divine is the word I
Mhm.
usually like to use. Um, Not just when you really want a miracle, but when you're, it's just a relationship, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
any other relationship.
yeah.
But also you have to know you're not always going to get what you want.
Yep. Yeah, I think, yeah, I remember having this conversation. I was in a teenager, I think, with somebody, and we were talking about like the power of prayer, and I have a lot of beliefs around what's possible with kind of prayer and things like that. But I was like, actually, I think some of it's just an opportunity to talk with that energy, to have that relationship. And you feel better just because you're connecting with that unconditional love, with that higher truth, with, again, whatever that divine creative energy, whatever you want to call it. that will make you feel better, just having having that connection there. So whether a miracle happens that you're praying for, or you just allow yourself to be in a different state for a while, I mean, that can be a miracle for a lot of people too, especially if they
Oh,
feel
that,
alone. There's nothing
yeah.
there. Yeah. Mhm.
And Lynn McTaggart's latest
Mhm.
research, well, from her last book, Power of Eight,
Mm.
really was the phenomenal benefits of you. Even if you're praying for someone else,
Yeah.
you get the enormous benefits. So I think there's been lots of studies, and probably people have had experiences of praying and things, miracles, there are little miracles happening. But
Yeah.
when you pray with that energy, that real humility of
Mhm.
asking, and you know that, and wanting the best for another human being, or maybe a group of human beings, um your cells get that information, and that can
Mhm.
only be good for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen that Hallow app. It's the guy
Mm.
Jonathan Rumi out of The Chosen, which he's very gorgeous. And him and oh, I could just watch that program over and over again. It's just like, oh dear. What's the actor's name? Anyway, there's two of them, and they've created this prayer app, and it's something like, I can't remember how many million, 6 million people. They advertised it in the middle of the Super Bowl, and something like 6 million people downloaded it.
But
It's
yeah.
like the biggest download ever. But it just shows you that people are, a prayer app. Who would have
Yeah.
thought? And it's creating that habit. I've still
Mhm.
not got a strong habit, and I really want to
Mhm.
have one, of that. I was even talking to somebody at a wedding recently, and he said, I don't have any faith, but I've started talking to, and I was like, well, that sounds like faith to me.
Yeah. At least a
But even
little
if,
bit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think when your heart's sore
Mhm.
and when you're scared, and I think can you do a little exercise, and I'll do a little one for anybody that's feeling any heartache or any fear around it, and we can just ease into this process a little bit. I've kind of put you in the spot there, but I know
No,
you'll have
it's okay.
something up your
I can do
sleeve.
a couple minutes, yeah. I mean, what's also coming through to share is it's this notion that because it is temporary, because life has a span to it, it makes it that much more beautiful and precious, and it means that it means that we'll actually do something with it. You know how if you have, like, way too long to do something, you don't get anything done? Just there's no focus.
100%.
Nothing there. Yeah, so there's some real, there's beauty in the temporary. So even though there's pain, or we attribute pain to that, to losing things, or and that can be the seasons, that can be the passing of time, it can be phases of our lives. I think it's recognizing that, if
Mhm.
we can embrace that, then yeah, there's real grace in that. But yeah, so just yeah, as an exercise for the heart, if people want to just close your eyes and take a deep breath, and just imagine that you're breathing in and out through your heart space. And if your heart or your chest is feeling constricted, just straighten your back a little bit. You can physically move your body so that those muscles are releasing a bit, your spine straightening a little. And even if it feels like your heart's only open a little bit, just start with that. And the idea, is that as you breathe in, these are some of the teachings of Shiva. As you breathe in, you're breathing in life force and vitality. So breathe in life force and vitality into your heart. And as you breathe out, you're breathing out the waste, the excess, the endings, and the death. So you breathe in life and vitality, and you breathe out death. And just allow your heart to soften and to expand with each in-breath, and just to release a little bit more with every out-breath. Just keep taking really nice deep breaths in and out of your heart, recognizing that every time you breathe in and expand, there's more capacity for love, there's more capacity for compassion, for connection, for empathy. And every time you breathe out, there's less space for fear, for anger, for sadness. And just take a moment to recognize that every breath of your life, there's a moment to be reintroduced, to be familiar with this cycle of life and death, that it's written into our bodies to live in these cycles of life and death. And so it's nothing we ever need to fear. And just taking a few more nice deep breaths, breathing in life, breathing out death. And just know you can come back to this practice at any moment, at any time. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Okay, I'll just take it straight from there because everybody's in that nice expanded state.
Yes, please.
So just scan the front of the body, the chest, the abdomen, maybe the shoulders too. Anything in the last hour has brought up any emotion, energy in motion. Maybe you're grieving right now. Maybe you're unwell. Maybe you have any fears around what's coming next. When are we going to see our loved ones again? Impatience and wanting to figure it out. So just allow everything that's there, all the thoughts, all the feelings, all the energy. And just for now, as best you can, just take your arms wide and let it all go. Set all the concepts and labels and the energy free, just for now. Trust and surrender to the process. And just feel into your heart, solar plexus, sacral. What's there in this moment? And just allow, embrace the energy that's there. And then just let it go. And just welcome any limiting, fearful concepts that you may have gathered from well-meaning others. Maybe you've created it yourself, maybe you've inherited it, doesn't matter. Welcome any limitation and blockages in the flow and just let it go. Set it free. And just expand the heart. And just allow unconditional love to flow through you and into every cell in that incredible energy mass ecosystem that we call the body. And welcome all wanting control, security, approval, separation and oneness. And just let it go. Again, some nice, easy breaths. Just giving the body permission to expand and relax. Trust and surrender into the process. Okay. So I can't see any questions or anything coming up. Sometimes it doesn't always show up on StreamYard. It depends where people are watching. But yeah, obviously Jen and I both work one-to-one if anybody needs any help. If you've got any questions, if you're watching this on replay, then put them in the box and we'll get back to you. It's very challenging times for some that we're living in right now, and I know that there's a lot of suffering around and a lot of fear, and I don't know how people that don't know how to let go actually are surviving, because I've got to do it pretty much every minute of every day. So yeah, I think creating a different relationship with the body and with our faith is going to be essential for our resilience, because the fear and staying in the fight or flight eventually will make us sick. It doesn't happen overnight, but we need to be able to manage and know that we can change our beliefs. And I was forced into it, with Joanna's diagnosis. But we don't need to wait until the brick hits you in the head. We can really examine what we're thinking and open up and explore other ideas and talk to people about what they've done, because and what they've read, and it's always going to be about what resonates with you, because you'll feel it in your heart straight away. You think, that feels nice, because if we're constantly fighting the inevitable, we'll run out of petrol, basically. You getting to add, Jen?
Starting towards the end of October, I'm going to be doing a series of 5 online events on a lot of this stuff. Right. Awesome. Really kind of the cycles of life and death and rebirth and all of that. So if anyone's interested, it will be online teaching and meditation and things like that. So I'm starting to add it to my website right now. But if anybody wants to learn more, you can just send me a message or go have a look. So it's time. It's time to talk about this stuff. Definitely.
Absolutely. Today, actually, I said to one of my clients, we've ended up having a discussion around this with every single person today, because I think there's not really very many people that are not being affected. And also, we know we want to live without fear. We've had enough of that claptrap over the last 4 years. People need peace in their hearts. And we know that in fear, our IQ goes down. And if we're being asked to make decisions from that place of like, I can't think straight. No, because you're not meant to be thinking when you're in fight or flight. You're meant to be climbing a tree or punching somebody. Or running. That adrenaline's designed to be getting used up by activity. So really learning how to take yourself out of fight or flight is a hugely important thing for your immune system as well, but also for your peace of mind, for the cells, and for everybody in your house and your workplace. It's just, it's so much easier.
For sure.
Okay, well, I hope you all enjoyed the chat and maybe got something from that. Thanks, Jen, for taking the time out.
Thank you so much for
it's as I say, we need to get this stuff out from under the carpet and talk about it. And I need to get the camera and my laptop working. I've got a load of lives organised.
For next
time.
Lovely
to see you.
Yeah, you too.
And sleep well, everyone. Night.
Bye.